All right, should be. Yep, we are recording. I see the file. Chapter 3 of Star Trek: The Motion Picture Novelization. This is technically, well, it's second and a half time I tried recording this video because I wasn't happy with the previous ones. So like in the movie, we're now following Spock, who is on Vulcan at Gaul, the plateau of Gaul, going through Kolinar, or trying to finish it, which it does explain. I'd have to look back at it, but there's one point in it where it does seem like what is actually being discussed is not purely a purging of emotions. And I should be clear that this is potentially... Sorry, I'm turning off a different computer. This is potentially me being a little biased because I don't... My preferred interpretation for Vulcans is they are deeply passionate, they're deeply emotional, they require logic to not be psychotic. And that's why they have such an obsession with logic, such rituals around it that, well, in truth, it is a religion. I mean, it truly is a religion. So Kolinar is not necessarily the purging of emotions, but it's about reaching the point at which you can completely dismiss them from yourself. So, yeah. But anyway, he's trying to do that. And he's there, and it's like, my final day. The master Tasai is coming towards me now, with lesser masters around her chanting in preparation for this. And when she comes, it's like, are you ready for the mind meld? I am ready. The minds connect. He will be exposed to her, so she will truly be able to decide if he has achieved this. But also, he will get to see himself from her view, all of her wisdom, all of her understanding, and then see his own place in the universe that way. So it's actually kind of a neat ritual in those ways. But there are also some aspects of this whole setup that are kind of stupid. One that I don't really care for is the idea that they don't, like, in the movie we see a carved stone figure of a Vulcan standing there, and he's, like, the steps are between the legs and he's at the base there. And it's like, yeah, this is so ancient that they, like, the records aren't even in Vulcan legend to explain stuff. And it's like, I don't really like that because, well, I mean, the only way that makes sense is because this place is about where they first learned logic and could control their emotions as they now do. So that statue would have had to have been carved after that. But we know that happened. That is part of the legend. So how do you have a legend that predates this thing? And it's like, oh yeah, we don't really know much about it. It's clearly honoring this achievement, right? I mean, it's like, how did you lose this legend? It seems very odd to me. Because it's also... You'd think that there would have been written language, you'd think, or at least tradition, oral tradition. Which, by the way, I do want to mention, because sometimes I'll see arguments about things concerning the past, concerning history, and people seem to have this obsession with the idea that, oh, if it's not written down, it's not history, it's not true. It's like, you have no idea how much it was passed down by oral tradition. You also don't recognize something else, that prior to mass production of literature, which isn't necessarily the printing press, but also like monasteries constantly writing it out, you may only know like a few books. But what you would do is whenever you were traveling, you would just recite them to yourself. So you'd be reinforcing that memory. And then also when you get there and can pass this down to somebody, you would be reciting to them, then they would learn it. And it kind of reminds me of something when I read the Epic of Gilgamesh, at least one of the translations. There were multiple in the book. But it points out that the Assyrian? I don't remember which, but in any case, I think Akkadian. There's a specific structure to how they write their epic poems. Like, you know, how paragraphs are formed, that there's always a certain pattern there. But the first paragraph of the Epic of Gilgamesh it doesn't follow that pattern. And then it's actually repeated at the end. And one idea that I had, that, I mean, might not be true, but I still kind of like the idea, is maybe the reason why it is not only different, but that it repeats, which then at the end is the idea that you would have somebody that is telling that story to somebody else. And so they start with this, and then by ending on the same thing, it is then imparting to them, you are to tell this story again to others. Like, you go forth and tell it yourself. It could also be just because what it is also like a description of the city that Gilgamesh was king of, and some interpret that as showing that the city is also like the human body, at least for their understanding in their mythology, the mythology that Akkadians had. So anyway, but yeah, that kind of linking around, I think actually makes a lot of sense, because what's the point of having a story if not for it to be told and shared? So having built in, I think that makes some sense. Anyway, so yeah, the idea that Vulcans don't know their own history here, I don't like that. That seems like, I'm just saying it's so ancient we know this stuff, but it's like this thing's more ancient that you do know for Vulcans, so make up your mind. But there's another thing about it that's even more annoying, because it describes he's wearing robes and it has symbols on them. And what it says is that I could just pull it up, I'd rather just do it by memory. But it says that, yeah, the meaning of the symbols are only known by the masters that live there. And it's like, oh boy. This is stupid. It is illogical as well. Okay, so it's like, I've got on my person right now that you can see 2 symbols, right? That you might not know their meaning, but I certainly do. That's why I wear them. And I would never share them with somebody else without them knowing it, without them understanding the value to it. If they didn't understand the value to it, I would not give these things to them. I would not in any way impart it to them. Of course, I don't know why for one of them I would ever impart it, but, I mean, one is the crucifix I wear. All right? As I would never give somebody a crucifix or a cross or any Christian symbol if they didn't have an understanding and value either of the symbol or from me. I mean, it's like, in theory, you could, if, like, I wear this every day. In theory, it could be if there was somebody incredibly close to me that weren't Christian, but they had a value of me, a love for me, could give it to them as a gift, but it's a symbolic of me instead of the Christian symbol, which that wouldn't be the most appropriate necessarily, but it still is like, there's still that value there that's why the symbol is there. That is its purpose, is that value. The other is this, which I have talked about before, is a Sigma Pi Sigma pin, because I was inducted, and that is of great importance to me. I very much value that I was inducted. So it's like that has special value to me, and I wear that to show that. And I do talk, and I've made a video talking about it. I've talked about it in other videos, I believe, besides that, and I'm talking about it now. And the symbols here, oh, hang on just a second. Here, this is a program, and the pin is a replica of this. So we've got Sigma Pi Sigma up at the top, a dynamo in there, and then light bulb, and then the Greek letters that spell out Sophia, which means wisdom. And it's also, I don't remember if it's in here, but those specific letters also have their own meaning. Like, so it spells out more than just wisdom. There's a greater meaning there. I'm sorry, I don't remember what that is. I could probably look it up. I just don't remember. But it's like, all that has meaning there. In fact, I've been to multiple inductions. They always explain it, because it is important to share that, because it is part of the meaning of the induction, the meaning of the pin, the meaning of the organization. You're telling me that Spock has been asked to wear these robes that have symbols on them, which are also on the statues, by the way. He's being asked to wear that. But he doesn't know the value to them? He doesn't know the meaning to them? This is illogical. This is absolutely illogical, because, like, why? They have no importance to him. There is no meaning to them, to him for them. It's like, sorry, I'm getting a little tongue-tied. So it's like, this is illogical. The masters should be making sure everyone on Vulcan knows. Because also then that way, every Vulcan that because it would be part of, like, this is a sacrament, right? the closest thing to what Kolinar is for humans is a sacrament. You don't go into that ignorant of it. You need to understand it. If you don't, there's problems. Right? I mean, it's like, then you can argue that the sacrament has no meaning if you didn't enter into it fully, knowing, willingly, all of that. Right? And it's like, I'm Catholic. I've mentioned that plenty of times before. Baptism is a little wonky, I will grant, because we're doing that to kids, infants even, that don't necessarily understand it all. But it is, that's part of the purpose of the parents and the godparents to, make sure that the values connected to it are passed on to the child. There's all that, but it's still, it's like, okay, that's only one. But it's like, because this is one thing, and I'm not necessarily going to be great at explaining this, but one thing that makes Catholicism different from many other Christian denominations is, to us, marriage is a sacrament. For many others, it isn't. That's part of the reason why different Protestant denominations can get a divorce, whereas Catholics, technically we can, but it's a different meaning, because we are like, yeah, sacraments can't be undone, so you can't get a divorce from your spouse, you get a divorce from the church. That's why we say Catholics don't get divorced, because it's basically, yeah, you're excommunicating yourself. That's not good. However, there's annulment. So there are certain requirements, and this is the whole, you need to, like, for Catholic sacrament, you have to know this stuff going in. And if you don't, that's actually grounds for annulment. At least I'm pretty sure it is, if you're not fully aware of it. But it is certainly if you go into it not wanting to fulfill the expectations of sacrament of marriage, just focusing on that one, that can be then you can petition for it to be annulled, and it will be granted. So, like, one of them is, in a Catholic marriage, there is an expectation of having children and raising them Catholic. If it's determined after the fact that, yeah, the spouse actually never intended to have children or never intended for them to be raised Catholic, that would be grounds for it to be annulled, because that would mean that you went through the sacrament, but one person was acting in bad faith, which means it doesn't apply. So it's like, Spock here is wearing symbols of the sacrament, but he has no understanding of their meaning. How is this valid then? I mean, he needs to have that understanding, and indeed, all Vulcans should. Any that might come to Kolinar, come to try to go through that, they need to have a full knowledge and understanding of what it is. Right? I mean, there might be some stuff that is kind of sort of secret, like, certain expectations when there. I can understand that, but it's still like, we're not hiding anything from you. I mean, I guess a way for that would be almost like, you might be able to see a complete schedule for boot camp, but that doesn't mean every aspect of it all, of a boot camp experience, is going to be on that schedule. I think that's kind of what I mean. It's like there might be things in there that you don't realize when you get started, but still, you can see and know everything that's ultimately going to be expected to you, at least on a high level. Maybe some of the details you don't know, but it's like, I'm sorry, it's nonsense and illogical. So yes, isn't nice being technical? All right. So it is also mentioned, we finally have timeline for these events compared to the original series. So, as the original series opening monologue always states, 5-year mission, 5-year journey. It only went for 3, but 5 was the plan. This is 2.8 years after the end of that. And for the bulk of this, Spock has been going through Kolinar, because he wants to purge or gain full mastery, full dominion over his human emotions, or just emotions in general. This I have a problem with, because I'm not sure when exactly Kirk became captain. Was the Enterprise the first time he was captain? In theory, he could have been captain of something prior, but it still is. He is not that particularly experienced when you think about it, because I think I was actually trying to look it up. He is, like they were saying, that he was about 32 at that time. So let's assume that's when the 5 years started. So he would now be 40 and is an admiral. That seems very young for an admiral, I'll be honest. Now, I can understand that, to me, admirals, there's certain responsibilities expected for an admiral. One is, I just see it as, they are flag officers. They are supposed to be able to command a fleet. Some don't necessarily ever do that. They might be more in a political role or just have other responsibilities, but it's still, they are a flag officer. Kirk has never really proven himself, at least in the original series, of being a flag officer. He's a command officer, but not a flag officer. Which, to me, part of how I understand that is, I think the movie is Task Force, Walter Brennan, Gary Cooper. They're both admirals. They planned out this large battle along with other people, but they are now in an aircraft carrier. This is in World War II. And they're sitting there facing each other. Walter Brennan is more or less relaxed. He's probably putting on how he likes his. Gary Cooper is actually really stressed. But they're not on the bridge. The ship's captain's on the bridge and doing the stuff he's supposed to do because he's the captain of the ship. They're not. They're flag officers, so they can issue commands to the fleet, but they're down there. That's not what they're doing right now. In fact, Walter Brennan's character even says, see that guy over there, that lieutenant? Yeah, he's the most important man in the war right now. Because, yes, they figured out the plan for the battle. That dude over there, who, the point he's even made, he was a bank teller before he joined. That's what he was. But now he's the one that's executing our plan. He's the one on the radio, monitoring all the information coming in, plotting things out on a map in front of him, and telling people, go here, do this, do that, to continue the plan. It's like, most important man in the battle right now. And it's like, he's just a lieutenant. These two are admirals. They're just having to sit there. And if they needed, they will do stuff. But it's like, when has Kirk demonstrated that he would be that? No, he's the captain of the ship. So why is he an admiral? I will say this, though. I think in one of the Star Trek episodes across what I consider the canon Trek, which is broadcast, so even accepting Enterprise, which I don't always want to, I reject everything Star Trek 2009 and on, all that I don't count, which makes research, looking things up a lot more interesting. Because they do try to, like, Memory Alpha does try to, like, oh, well, we're getting new information from this other stuff, so that's what we're going to take as being true. It's like, no, don't do that. Anyway, lost my train of thought a little bit. Oh, that's right. I think it is stated that the Commandant of Starfleet Academy either is an admiral or is treated as being equal in rank to an admiral. Don't remember, but that would be somebody who's not necessarily a flag officer, when it doesn't have a fleet under his command, but is so critical, so important. It makes sense that if not an admiral, you treat them as though they are an admiral, that they are that important. Okay. Yeah, there's also thing that it's awkward. And it's like, I kind of get some of it, and I can get the whole, okay, it's the 70s. Actually, I'm not sure if this is from the 70s, but it feels like it's from the 70s. It's like, okay, I can understand that, but it's like, you're saying things, it's kind of like that whole, he's named Jim after his mother's first love instructor. It's like, the hell are we doing this for? Why are we, we don't need these ideas in our minds for Star Trek. We really don't. But I'll come back to that because it's actually explained in a footnote. So Spock, he is all ready. He's certain he is ready for Kolinar to be finished, to be recognized as having purged all his emotions, all that. But then V'ger reaches out. Somehow V'ger's doing this across light years. And V'ger is also pure technology and somehow has telepathy. I don't like this, by the way. This is just... I'm fine with telepathy existing in science fiction. But to me, telepathy is something more metaphysical. And so should be mysterious and therefore not achieved by technology. So V'ger should not be able to do this, but fine, whatever. I don't like this, but moving on. He feels V'ger reach out. And by the way, so do the other Vulcans. but he feels it reach out, and it scares him. Because he can sense that it is searching for Earth. And it does have a special meaning to him because he can already recognize V'ger is an ultimately, by the way, we don't know the V'ger name yet, but it is an ultimately logical being, but which wishes to interact with humans. Humans are in part irrational. So Spock is like, crap, I'm who it wants, because I can translate from logic to human irrationality and back. Because he has the experience being around them, but also has the, he is part human, so he understands it from that perspective as well. So it really touches him as well. But there's also the whole, he's afraid. And he's like, I'm supposed to purge myself of all emotions, and now I got fear. That's an emotion. On the one hand, yeah, kind of, but fear is also a reflex. Yeah, fear is also a reflex. It's not purely an emotion. So Spock, you're fine. But he's also like, and I'm afraid because it's coming and may destroy Earth and humanity. And I need to have no connections to it. It's like, okay, dude, I get the whole, you feel, because it even mentions in there that, you know, he has to say goodbye to Kirk, who is like a brother to him, like very much, you know, like the word that he uses, and this is where the footnote is. There's 3 translations for the word. I'm going to give you 2 right now. The third is what I'll come back to. Because it's just, how it, what's talked up around that is definitely 70s, or modern. But it can translate to friend or brother. And he definitely believes Kirk is a brother. And it's like, okay. Spock, having friends, having friendships is logical. It is. Because friends mean that there's a familiarity there, a trust there, a faith there that you can rely on. So, let me put it like this, Spock, or all those who desire logic and think that that means you need to cut off your friends. If you are in need and you approach a stranger, it may seem logical that a stranger will help you because you are in need. And let's assume the stranger is not in need. But they do not know you. They have no reason to trust you. They have no faith in you because they are a stranger. So you cannot rely on them. A friend, however, you do know. They know you. You have faith in them. They have faith in you. There's mutual trust and respect here. You are in need. They have the ability to help you in that need. They will do so. This is logical. Friendships are logical. Why you think you gotta cut it off? Further, Earth being safe is also a logical desire if you are in the Federation, because humans and humanity are kind of a big part of the Federation. Okay, I mean, it's like... Now, actually, I don't even need to continue that point. It's just, they are very important. You being concerned, you being afraid, you reflexively being concerned, which is fear, for humanity, entirely appropriate, entirely logical. What is your problem here? Okay, fine. You are recognizing it as an emotion. That's fair. Okay, but the cause of it isn't wrong. There's nothing illogical there. It is logical to be that, to have that reaction. You interpreting it as an emotion, you feeling it as an emotion, okay, now you got a problem with Kolinar. But the idea that you're a Vulcan that is completely Kolinar and that means you can't have friends, it's like, dude, you are dumb. Okay. So it goes on a little bit. Tesai is the Vulcan master. I don't remember if I've mentioned her name or not. Who, the end of Kolinar, is going to be a mind meld. And we do see that in the movie. She reaches down and, you know, does mind meld with him. That isn't to end Kolinar. It's... You know, that isn't just in the ritual. It is he... He's been disturbed by V'ger's consciousness touching his. They all have felt it, but they're like, does that have special meaning to you? And it does. Because he feels that he is that Rosetta Stone. That's in fact the language used. That he is the Rosetta Stone that V'ger seeks. So it does, like there's something, a very personal connection they may not understand because they're not half human and they have not spent time around humans as he has. So yeah. So he is feeling that fear. He's also feeling shame because he thought he was ready, but now he's like, no, I'm not. And this disturbance with him, she is now doing the mind meld with him, not so much to complete Kolinar, but to understand this and also help him. So it's more like, I am your friend, I'm helping you. So again, it's logical. This relationship, it's not like, oh yeah, we'll just get some random Vulcan to come over here and help you. Why? There wouldn't be any benefit to do that. It's logical, it's her doing it, because she's there, she believes she can't help, so she helps. That's all logical, and she is acting in a friendly way. I'm not going to give up on this point. I'm really not, because it's really stupid. Anyway, it is actually kind of interesting what they described there, because Spock hears something, and this I actually do want to read. The Klingons weren't destroyed. It feels like they've become wall exhibits in hell, and is headed for Earth, Spock. I wish you were here to help me understand. And this puzzles him because he hears that in Kirk's voice, but Tasai is the one who's in his mind. So why is that? So it's like he from his perspective, it's essentially she should be the one talking to me, but I'm hearing Kirk. So it's, as I said, it's logical. Kirk is his closest friend, is his brother, is human, and so there's concern that, and so his mind is going to, what is Kirk, what does Kirk need? I need you here so I can understand it. This is all very reasonable. But Sai would also be aware of this, and when the mind meld ends, tells him your answers are found elsewhere, which that is in the movie. I might have gotten the exact quote wrong, but it's still like, yes, you do need to go. This is not where you need to be. You're not going to find your answers here. And also, I don't remember if I said in this version or not. The ritual ending with the mind meld is in part to also allow the Vulcan going through Kolinar, in this case Spock, to see themselves through the view of the Master, who that will help them understand their place in the universe. Which, I mean, that actually makes sense. I kind of like that. I'm okay with that. But yeah, it's, and it makes sense for the end of that. But it is also kind of curious because I'm going back to the whole you need to know what you're in for. I could almost see an argument that no, that should happen at the beginning. Like the Master do that so that you gain an insight into what they have achieved, and they can also gain insight into what is your potential, and might even then decide, you know what? No, you are not the Kolinar. You know what? I'll even go further. I could believe that there would be someone that's like, no, you are not for Kolinar. Why? I want to control my emotions. Because you already are in control. And when you think about it, Kolinar is for those Vulcans that need that control. So in theory, you could have a Vulcan that doesn't need that achieves that achieves such control of their emotions, or the purging of their emotions, without the ritual. So yeah, that actually is kind of a funny point. Huh. Anyway, let's get to this last thing. So as I said, Tahila is the word used that is typically, the human concept of friend is most nearly duplicated in Vulcan thought by the term Tahila. But it has two other translations. Brother, so friend and brother, that makes sense, I mentioned about those, and lover. So on its own, this doesn't bother me. I do at times, not that I am a linguist, but I do at times like thinking through language. And it is interesting to me how you do have words with various, with what appear to be various meanings in English, but obviously in the original language, no, it may only have one meaning, and we are the ones that have multiple, so. Excuse me. I'm just trying to think of a way to put it that may make sense. Okay, blue, you, like, if I say blue, someone, like a translation that might be sky blue, sapphire, baby blue, and so on. Like multiple things there. Kind of like that, but then, it's just, anyway. I do find that the way the words relate together interesting. Now, lover being part of friend and brother, which actually, I will say this, if Vulcan is a gendered language, then should also include sister. You would just change, so like, instead of it being Tahila, maybe Tahila, Tahili, something like that, where it just end, it would have a different gender term there, and then it would be feminine, so sister. It's like that actually would make sense. But lover, it's like, in some ways, I'm okay with that, because while we typically would associate the word lover with romantic love, now I don't want to look up the definition of lover, I don't think I need that. But if it is just a person with whom you share love, if that's what we use as the definition, the love of a family member, such as a brother or sister, or the love of a friend, then you would still be lovers. It's just the common connotation of romantic love complicates it. But it's like, just lover itself there, not really a problem for me. And it then goes on to have a little bit of fun, that apparently there were rumors because of this translation that and since Kirk's and Spock's relationship was unusually close, this has led to some speculation over whether they had actually indeed become lovers. Okay, the Enterprise isn't that big. People probably just, needed some way to pass the time, so just having some stupid fun, making jokes about it. It's like, whatever. Whenever Spock heard about this stuff, he had always dismissed it with his characteristic lifting of his right eyebrow, which usually connotated some combination of surprise, disbelief, and or annoyance. And it's like, yeah, that's what you do. Because it's like, grow up. I mean, I get it's a joke, so I'm not telling you that you're stupid, but grow up. And by the way, this is like a quote from Kirk, because he was like, I'd never actually heard of this. But his response, now that it has been asked of him, although I have no moral or other objections to physical love in any of its many earthly, alien, and mixed forms. This feels 70s. Yeah. It feels 70s. And a little bit modern day as well. But continuing the sentence, though, I've always found my best gratification in that creature woman. And it's like, see, now I got a problem. Because the wording there. The best gratification in that creature woman. It's like, okay, yeah, you are saying you prefer women. You like the ladies. We already know that about you, Kirk. That's not... Yeah, we already know that. But best gratification, that implies... that you've had non-best. I don't even know this about Kirk. Really don't. And it's like, if it's just him being like, hey, people love the way they want to love, that's 70s. Also modern day. In some ways it seems a bit more aggressive modern day than 70s, but regardless, it's like, I can understand that. But then it's like, oh, it's not my best gratification to be with women. It's like, oh, shit. What did you do? I do not need to know that Kirk was sexually experimenting, okay? I don't need to know this. But not with other species. I'm saying, nope, don't need it. And I should be a little clearer there, with obviously other species. Because technically, yeah, in the original series, there are multiple times that he had relationships with women, well, with other species, but they were always humanoid women. It's like, to look at them, obviously because they used actresses, they used human actresses, so they always at least resembled it. But it's not like, he... Like, does this imply he may have tried to get it on with a Tholian? With a female Tholian? I mean, it's like... Or some other species that's clearly not him. I mean, it's like... I don't need this... I don't need this thought for Kirk. I really don't. But, the last part of this, though, is what... I mean, both. It's like, dude, man, I don't need this about Kirk. It's not helping with some of the jokes about his proclivities. I think I mispronounced that, but moving on. But it's also another thing that I it's one of those things that I actually really, really dislike, has come to be considered canon, and it's like, anyway, let me just read it, and then I'll get to it. Also, I would dislike being thought of as so foolish that I would select a love partner who came into sexual heat only once every 7 years. I mean, for one thing, it's like, dude, we don't, no, we don't need you having a comment like that, Kirk. Really don't need that in my mind. But the other is, I hate this concept that Vulcans only had sex every 7 years. For one thing, as I recall, and it's been a few weeks now since I watched through them. 2 episodes I know it was brought up in, but Amok Time, I'm pretty sure, is the first episode of the original series where Vulcan sexuality is brought up at all, and that's just the whole going to sexual heat thing. But there's no mention of the 7 years in that, as I recall. That's later. That's in a different episode when it's not necessarily trying to be consistent. And it is also, Spock is old enough that, I mean, it's like, and how it's described in Amok Time seems like it just happens. Like, it just comes upon him, and like, you know, it's not, oh, it'll be 7 years in a few months. I need to schedule leave. It's more of a, uh-oh, I'm feeling this. I only have like a week to get back to Vulcan or else I die. This is a problem. It's much more that kind of situation. So, but even feel like, oh, well, it's, you know, then 7 years after that each time. It's, well, here, let me finish up with the Amok Time. Because there's some other things there where it's like, I see there being contradictions, or at least inconsistencies. That he had a betrothed who she was still on Vulcan, and they were betrothed when they were a very young age, but they had a mental link formed such that, well, he, like V'ger, can, despite light years between them, know instantly it's his time. He's got to come home for this. Like, she knows, and I can't remember the character's name, sorry. But she knew immediately. Because that psychic link, and so now he has to go. Okay, that's fine. Here's the problem, though. Is that when we get to Journey to Babel, where we meet Sarek, his father, and Amanda, his mother, she's human. So she is not capable of the telepathy needed for that kind of betrothal. So, what happened to Sarek's first wife, essentially, is the question there. There's also Sarek, I'm pretty sure it would be noticeably older than she is also, so it's, like, I mean, that is also an issue with what they describe, the whole betrothal thing, is it would mean that they should always be very near each other in age, which in humans that isn't necessarily the case. And it's like, okay, are we saying that is in fact how Vulcans work, period? Or is it technically possible that you would do the betrothal so that there is a greater age difference? Or what? I mean, it's basically when, and there's other things with biology here where it's like every 7 years does make sense. It's just, Amanda doesn't make sense. A human woman does not make sense as a mate for a Vulcan because you can't have that link. So, yeah, now true. Star Trek V, because I mentioned what happened to Sarek's first wife, it does mention that he was married to a Vulcan princess prior to being married to Amanda, and that's how he got Sybok. But there's still no explanation of what happened to her. Presumably she died, but we don't really know more than that. But it still is, how did Sarek remarry? Because as I said, that shouldn't be able to work there. So it's like, we can't be constrained by the Amok Time situation. But then also, as far as every 7 years, it's like, okay, you're going into sexual heat every 7 years where it's like, this is happening. But it also seems to me, it's like, it is logical to try to reproduce earlier than that. And say, why is it no, that's the only time we can, versus just it is logical to try again to have a child. Because it's also, I'm saying, if it's only every 7 years, I mean, it's like, what would that mean for a human? Like 3 or 4 times? I mean, it's like 3 times would be, assuming you conceive a child each time, that's 21 years. I'm pretty sure that would be very long for human fertility, for human female fertility. So that's 3 kids, which is replacement plus 1. 4, it's 28 years. Now, true, Vulcans, they could be different. They could be very different. This is never established, though. And so it does seem to me it actually makes sense that no, whenever it is logical, there's a 7-year, it's going to happen, but it might be logical to try more frequently than that, especially if there is not 100% guarantee of conception. So, I mean, it's like it puts such risk to there not being a next generation that can replace the existing, that this is actually like really dumb. Plus, there's also what about like actual males to females, boys to girls, the numbers there, because like this is one thing about humanity is that there, and I don't think it is just that typically men are more likely to die sooner, that there is technically a bias that there are more women in the world than men. I think it is also that it isn't just 50-50. I think it is very slightly, like 51-52% chance of it being of having a girl than a boy. I'd have to check on that. But it's still, it's like if you had that kind of offset there, or if it is stronger than that in Vulcans, and you are like very rarely having children, it's like that's kind of dangerous. Because I mean, it's like you risk not having that next generation that is necessary. So yeah, but as I said, it's like if it's logical for them to try to have more children, they would just do that. There's no, I don't see this idea that no, it's only the 7 years. So, I mean, yeah, I don't like that concept, and I feel, well, no, I don't feel. I do remember it is a separate episode from Unlocked Time where the 7-year thing is mentioned, and yeah, you just like move on from there. But it feels like people just try to then take these things that were not necessarily written to be consistent and try to say that no, this is how it works, and it's like there's consequences that I don't like, and so I would just they can try to have kids whenever they want to. It's just once every 7 years they're gonna wanna. But it's yeah. What do you do with the whole the betrothal linking thing? And so how do you have Amanda make sense with that? What happens if one or the other dies? There's also, oh crap! Now I'm trying to remember. Did they in Enterprise give to Paul going? Did they have her going through that? They may have. I can't remember now. I don't want them to have done that though, because in Amok Time, there's no indication that she is going through something similar. And you'd think that because of the mental link between Spock and her, she would have to also be going through it. I think it makes more sense that if she does go through a sexual heat, that it manifests very differently than it does for the males. I think that makes more sense than now we'll just also have the females go through it all. But yeah, what would happen if she had died prior to Spock reaching this point? I mean, it's like, then what's his solution? Does he need to find another Vulcan bride? Does he need to find any bride? I mean, what happens if he had died and then she has her equivalent? I mean, it's like, I like thinking through things. In case you can't tell by my being so technical and why I'm just continuing to talk on this, as I like trying to think through those things, and I will reject something if it's like, yeah, I can't give an explanation such that how this can possibly work for a long period of time. But if I can give even the small thing that, I said, it's logical for them to try to have kids more frequently, then, hey, that works. But I make sure it's stated, so it's just annoying when it's not. But that does also kind of sort of remind me of something else, because the joke is, why did Sarek marry Amanda? It seemed logical at the time. Because, I mean, it is basically, if you watch Journey to Babel, no. he does genuinely love his wife. He teases her a little bit. I mean, he does love her. So it's not that it seemed logical. It's like, no, I love her. Crap, what was the point I was trying to get to? But then I got distracted a little bit with that. And she also loves him. But it's like, it was probably not just it seemed logical to have Spock. It was probably, no, that's right, that's what the thought was. There was no reason to believe that Vulcans and humans could successfully mate, could successfully produce children. Which would mean then that actually that marriage could be considered illogical, because it cannot produce such a fruit. But Sarek, being ambassador to Earth, might be able to argue, well, it would help, sort of like a political marriage, where a prince of one kingdom is married to the princess of another, so they are united and it ends any war and potential conflict. It's like maybe that, but even then that doesn't seem to make much sense, because it's not like Vulcans and humans would have been in conflict that would resolve anything. Yeah, it definitely wouldn't, because in that case, then you'd really think that Kirk would have been aware that, oh, Sarek, your wife is human, is Amanda. Yes, we know that, because it was a big deal that, we had this political marriage. Oh, wait, and that's right, Sarek. Oh, Spock, these are your parents. Now, I know, I was like, that would not have been secret. So, yeah, I mean, it is just kind of funny, because it is they would have to have already known that it would be possible, which makes no sense, because, I mean, it's like, in humans, mitochondrial DNA is passed on from the mother, because the egg is a larger cell and actually has mitochondria in it, which they then separate, do the whole division. That's what is passed down, mother to all children. So Spock would have to have the mitochondria of Amanda, but at the same time, he has the green blood of Sarek, Vulcan, but it's also, he would have been fed via red blood during development by his mother. It is one of those things where it's actually like, no, there's no way in hell these two should have been able to have a kid. Similarly with like half Klingons, it's like their blood is purple. I don't know about Trills, what color blood there is. Bajorans seemingly do have red blood, so it is potentially not. So it doesn't seem as unreasonable then that how they addressed Nana Visitor's pregnancy during Deep Space Nine by being like, oh, O'Brien, Miles, and Keiko had a kid, and they had to transfer the pregnancy over to Kira because Keiko had been injured, and it's like, okay, that's not necessarily unreasonable, because there might actually be sufficient, like, biological blood compatibility there to make that possible. But dude, Vulcans, green blood, I don't think that's gonna work, and it's like copper based too. Wait, no, that should be poison. How the hell would Spock have even? I get too technical with this stuff, I know, but it's like I can't help it. I gotta work through this stuff mentally and see how this would all work out, because if you go back and look at that the video I did on the science fiction presentation, you're in a box. You've built the box, but it's like exploring in the box and finding ways to do things, and like going down so technical. You can find that a box can be very deep. It was actually very, very large when you start doing that exploration. So if you are reaching outside the box, breaking the rules of the box, then it's like, why? I mean, it's like you very possibly have the tools in the box. Just think things through, and you may find, hey, there's a solution right here if I just thought it through. Or you might find, I need to change the box. I need to throw something out. I need to completely change something, so now I have the solution. It's like, that's fine. You can do that. So, even if it's retconning. If it's a retconning in good faith, that's fine. Bad faith retconning, not so much. Alright, that has been more than enough of my blathering, I believe. I guess I'll just see you in the next one. And, oh boy. I'm sorry, it's just the whole, not only are you getting my blathering because I'm technical, you're also getting my blathering because I know Star Trek fairly well. Um, because I do have a love for it. I do wish I could remember what all the episodes. Oh, don't forget about that. I did do a little bit more looking concerning the Universal Translator, and one thing that I was seeing, which is on a Stack Exchange, um, for whatever that's worth, it does seem to describe my thinking that I'd seen it just stated that the Universal Translator works by like broadcasting the thoughts into your brain, or just is doing like some sort of work with your brain. That is not unique to me. Other people are making reference to it in this thread, so I feel vindicated, even though I couldn't find Memory Alpha stating that. But then it's also, as I think I said earlier in this one issue that I have with Memory Alpha is they've been changing things to have it align with the post Star Trek 2009 stuff, the modern streaming stuff, which I've never watched. I have no interest in watching. I do not. To me, Star Trek canon is the broadcast TV shows, and also the movies that are directly related there. So that to me is canon. I don't even want to take Enterprise as canon. I got so many issues with that. But I will still accept that before I accept those things. But with Memory Alpha, they are like incorporating that stuff as canon, so even if it would be contradictory to other things that, like, in theory, Spock has a sister, I once heard is one thing that they did. It's like, no. What? No. Nothing about it. And other things there, it's like, this is dumb. My brain just turned off a little bit. That they're just going in there and being like, well, that's a new thing, so that's the canon, we're going to put that in there. It's like, it might be bad canon compared to what was before, and it's like, that makes it hard to find some information. So that's definitely happened with Star Trek. I'm pretty sure it's also happened with Star Wars, with where they'll put things from some of the newer stuff there, and force it in, and it's like, well, that doesn't really work. I mean, it's like, I think an example would be if you had, for Star Wars, and this is just easy to do because it is one of the issues I have with Revenge of the Sith, that if it were written into the Wikipedia, excuse me, that Yoda did state that to the Jedi, peace is so important, and ending the Clone War is so important that a Jedi must be willing to sacrifice the lives of other Jedis to achieve this peace. Except that directly contradicts his own actions at the end of Attack of the Clones. So which is it? Personally, I take it as Revenge of the Sith is badly written already. We should reject that statement entirely and not let that be in the wiki. It doesn't matter if that's what's stated. It's like, so that's canon. It's like, it's bad canon. It doesn't work with everything else with the other statements there. So we're going to go with that. So yeah, I get the whole appeal of editors on Wikipedia kind of thing, but at the same time, lore masters help, and that's kind of my point. And this is a better way to put it. My issue with the whole how the hell does Vulcan sexuality work? It feels like they didn't have a lore master when they were trying to develop it, but people act as though no, it is meant to be all consistent. No, they were likely just making this up as they went along, and we're now trying to force everything together that doesn't necessarily work that way. Think through the technicalities, and you realize that, yeah, certain things we have to either throw away or just diminish. So, yeah, don't always assume that there is a lore master there. But when you write, be that lore master, okay? Try to think things through well enough that, no, this is how it works. Even if you're not writing it actively in the book, you can still have it in a note, or you can just know it yourself. So if someone asks you the question, you can answer it, or you can just use it later on. So, anyway. See you next time.